Hey everybody, back with another video. This time I am officially 2 weeks plus a couple days out from having my Achilles surgery. Just as a quick review, I had chronic Achilles tendinosis from a Achilles tear, actually multiple tears, back in 2017-ish, and eventually led to having my Achilles tendon debrided and removed from the end of my heel bone, and then that was a section of that bone was removed with a lump of bone that was called the Hogland deformity. So, and again, a quick review. So the surgery was on the 6th, and then in the meantime, I have now had my initial splint that was placed on, sort of a pseudo half cast. They use that because it's quick, easy, it's light, and it also allows for some expansion relative to the swelling that goes on. Later they will, and they did, convert it to a cast. It's a little hard to see on the video if I raise my leg up, but what you've got here is a cast on the lower part of my leg, and it's held in a downward pointed position. It's going to be in that cast for 2 weeks. They also at this time pulled the stitches, and I'll stay in this cast, non-weight bearing, for another 2 weeks, and then they will raise the foot a little bit, put it back in a cast, another couple weeks, raise it a little bit. Hopefully within about the 3rd step of this, it'll be back to neutral, and at that time, hopefully transition to a walking boot. In that walking boot, I will start to be able to do weight bearing and walk with the boot, but not allowing the foot to go past about 90 degrees like this. This being the lower leg, this being your foot. And for some time, then with physical therapy, eventually starting adding some stretching activities to that. I'll go into those details as that time arises. Just as a kind of what has gone on for the last couple weeks, the pain initially was pretty mild after surgery because they had a block, which is where they inject the upper thigh, basically numbing everything below. That actually lasted a lot longer than the usual sort of 8 to 12 hours. For me, I actually had numbness throughout the night into the next day, which was pretty good. The pain after that was similar to having a broken leg or something like that. Have you ever had that kind of pain? That wasn't too terrible. Later, earlier this week, I actually had a semi-fall. Basically, my foot went down. I did not want to put the weight on it, so as soon as my toes hit the ground, it pushed a little bit, and I pulled my leg back and let myself kind of fall over from the walker, the roller, knee roller. Again, I'll show a picture of that, and then which is one of the problems of that knee roller, is that it's very easy to pitch to the side, and if it goes to the right side where my injury is, there's no way to control falling unless you put your foot down. And especially in the splint, there's no support, so if I was to slam my foot down, it would allow it to hinge the foot and potentially tear the surgical site. So again, that's why I allowed myself to kind of do a slow motion fall to the side. No injury from it, but I did go in and have them pull the splint, and that's where the picture shows the stitches that will be posted as well here. And then no issues. Went in yesterday and had the stitches pulled. A little bit of pain with that, but that was because they were pretty tight stitches, and a small bit of bleeding, which you're on aspirin during this period of time, so a little bit of bleeding with the stitches being pulled is not unusual, nor concerning. They did put some non-adherent dressing and then rewrapped it, and they put an actual cast on. Now this cast is again in the toe down position, and I did have some pain over the course last night, some irritation at the incision sites and some pressure, but that has resolved by today. I do have some residual pain medication in case I need it. I've been avoiding NSAIDs because they do slow bone healing. It's okay to take them in the first couple weeks in short amounts. However, due to my advanced age and just making sure everything heals right, I've only taken a couple doses of ibuprofen over the course of the last 2.5 weeks or so. So that's the basic catch up to where I'm at. So I'm going to show some pictures. This is the knee roller that I use. It has a basket on the front. They do have the ones without that. It also has a little pad cover on it. They do sell those in various types. I may get one that is the wool or fake wool kind of pad. It does help prevent some of the sweatiness that you get with the skin contact in the upper portion of the lower leg against it. So I do recommend getting a cover of some kind. They're available on Amazon from $7 to $20 to $30 if you want real sheep wool or something like that. But basically just something to keep it soft and dry. Also adds a little bit of traction to keep your leg from slipping off it. As I had mentioned, the kind of fall, they can zoom pretty fast on flat ground. They do catch cracks and they do catch stones pretty easily, and so if you're walking outside with them, be very careful and just take short, choppy sort of steps with it as opposed to trying to push off and glide. But they are great. I use it almost exclusively. I do have crutches. I am familiar with crutches from a prior fracture in my foot, so I'm pretty comfortable on them. However, the knee roller is definitely a bonus, especially since you're going to be on it all the time. I had some questions and some things I'd like to address. So for example, that first week, I really focused on getting my leg elevated and my activity levels were very minimal. By the second week, I started adding some light upper body, just kind of activity to keep it, my upper back and so forth from getting too uncomfortable from being in bed. I did try to change my positions frequently, so not laying flat all the time, not being upright all the time, definitely helped. And so light upper body, band work, some things like that. I did do some one knee on the roller locked and the other leg doing some body weight squats just to try to get some hinging and some glute activation. You will definitely get some good non-injured leg activity when you're using the roller a lot, like I do. I still try to take active involvement in everything. So I still cook, I still clean the litter boxes, I still do the other kind of activities around the house. So that gets me moving around during this time. Some people will find that the pain may be too much for doing that, and that's okay. But you do want to start adding in activities, particularly starting in that second week going forward. Now that I have the cast on, I'm actually much more comfortable with doing activities because if for some reason my foot goes down, it is protected in the cast, which is actually a benefit of having a cast as opposed to the splint or even the walking boot, which you're more likely to try to push things. And that's why my surgeon has actually put me in a cast rather than a walking boot at this time. Some people might look and see the early weight bearing. That tends to be the newer trend. Some of the older surgeons still prefer to do the non-weight bearing. The data does show earlier return to activity, such as running, with the early weight bearing. But at 1 year out, there's no difference. So if you are looking at it from the long picture, again, there's no downside to the non-early weight bearing like I'm doing, other than that getting back to running. Now, I am interested in continuing back into my running sooner. So what I'm going to be doing is, as I discussed, some blood flow restriction, light activity with my lower body. Obviously, I can't do a lot of work with the calf or the shin, but you can do isometrics, where you lift the toes up against the cast, holding. You can press down, you can press to the side, You could even add blood flow restriction to those activities. You could even do a little sort of put your finger in the muscle and try to clench it to contract against it, sort of the mind-body thing that some of the bodybuilders discuss. They talk about putting their finger onto the part of the delt that they're trying to actually activate, and by touching it or tapping it, you actually develop sort of a mind-body connection to that muscle to help activate it. Runners use that sometimes with a glute pre-running exercise, tapping their butt, trying to make sure that they engage their glutes when they run. So these are some of the things that you can do to try to get some muscle clinch. I may have mentioned a little bit earlier also about using some nerve stimulation, such as like a TENS unit or some of these other kind of things. And again, that may be something that can be done while it's in a cast to try to stimulate the muscle a little bit. The data on that is less clear than the blood flow restriction, and it only seems to show that it helps maintain muscle mass, not necessarily strength. But muscle mass is important. If you can maintain muscle mass, or you can develop muscle mass in the rehab phase, then you tend to get back to your sport sooner. So what does that mean? Some of the criteria that physical therapy will use and to allow you to move to a next level of physical therapy, so from walking to jogging, jogging to running, running to running uphill and sprints, is that you can get back to, for example, one of the first criteria is at least 75% of the mass or the size of the calf prior to pre-surgery. I've measured myself prior to surgery, so I can track those numbers pretty accurately once the splint comes off and I'm actually able to do the walking and so forth in the rehab. So that is an important thing to consider prior to doing any surgery, is to do your body measurements. I did the calf in both the standing and the seated position. I will also tend to do a full flex, full clench, get the biggest pump sort of thing, just for my own curiosity, and measure that, but that's not necessarily the important one. It's basically just that most physical therapists are just using the standing calf diameter. And also, when you do that, make sure that you mark or have a good landmark. So for example, I'll use the tip of the knee, where I have a known spot there at the top of the patella, and then I will measure down. I believe it's 8 inches, and that is the place, so I have a consistent place that I always measure around, and that's generally the widest spot on my calf. It may be different on yours. You can find a measurement that works for you and just get a little log and write that in. So those are the updates so far on what's going on with my post-op. And so not a lot of new things, other than, again, the periodic pains that I'm getting are just kind of one of those random in the middle of the night, wakes you up, kind of feels like an ice pick in the heel, but those are usually short-lived. And there's also sort of a general ache that is similar to like you might have after having a fracture, because again, they've cut a chunk of bone off, so it's going to have to heal just like a broken bone would heal. So that's going to take some time, and most broken bones, particularly if they're a rib, that might take 6 weeks before it starts feeling better, honestly. Versus 4 weeks if it's one that's stabilized in a splint sort of thing. So I'm still well within that period of time where it's expected to have that kind of pain. I will do a further update video that discusses some of the supplements that I've been using. Just as a quick, the big things are your vitamin D, calcium, and I'm also doing the collagen tablets. So those are some of the basic ones, but I'll go into the other details and explain a little bit why in another video. Keep this one condensed to a reasonable amount of time. As we start doing more rehab, I'll discuss those things. And at some point, we'll do some tri-specific stuff as I clean up my pain cave here, and we start talking about the different bikes and things that I have. Behind me is my old CD01. Classic bike, still a beautiful ride, and it's my backup bike when I take to races and so forth, just in case my Di2 fancy CD PR6 goes down. So anyway, I hope if this gives some information to you and helps out with everything. And again, comment below if you have any questions, concerns, anything that's offline that relates to either the physical therapy, training when you're older, general comments regarding nutrition and so forth, or just anything triathlon or ultra distance, etc. I'm happy to try to answer. And if it's something that relates to this particular video stream, I'll try to integrate that in. And then also, I will start doing some triathlon specific training videos and so forth, and I will put the links to that below as well. So be sure to like and share, and we'll see you next time.